Good morning, ladies. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much for being early for the lesson.
You're welcome.
I sent the lesson, the questions yesterday to help us understand how we can plot the points on the XY plane. First of all, we needed to know, I'm just reminding ourselves that the vertical axis is the Y axis and the horizontal axis is the X axis. Clear? Clear?
Yes, teacher.
The vertical axis is the Y axis and the horizontal axis is the X axis. Some people who still had a challenge in mapping the axis. When you draw the Y axis and the X axis, you need to mark the points on both axes. When you draw your Y axis, you draw your X axis. The horizontal axis is the X axis. The vertical axis is the Y axis. After drawing the axes, they intersect at the origin. The point where they intersect is a 0, 0. Now you mark the points on the axes. We have our graph paper. We have the lines drawn, but they are some bold lines equivalent to 1 centimeter. Those of you who have graph books, they are those ones whose graph paper is like this one, where the bolding is 1 centimeter. The bolding is 1 centimeter. So let's take steps of 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter representing a step. From here up to here, from 0 to 1, it is 1 step. We have 1 and 1 centimeter. From 1 to 2, it is 1 centimeter. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That is where our graph can reach. Then on the x-axis, still mark the points. Let's know where exactly 1 is, 2 is, and so on. Some people don't mark the axes, and they get confused when they begin writing the numbers. They don't know where exactly they are. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and so on. Now, I sent some questions to you. It was on midpoints. It was on midpoints. We're given the points which when joined, they form a line segment. Naginda, you have your hand up. Lukoda, you have your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to ask.
Yes.
Teacher, I wanted to ask if it's possible to get a decimal point when you're doing coordinates.
A decimal point?
Yes, is it possible?
It is possible to have a decimal point. For instance, like I told you at the beginning, that the x-axis represents a number line. And when you put it vertically, it represents a vertical number line. On a number line, we have so many points, only that we only consider integers. we consider integers, those are whole numbers. But in between 1 and 2, there are so many numbers. You can have 1.5, you can have 1.3. There are so many numbers between these two integers. So it is very possible to have coordinates that are decimal.
Okay, thank you.
Mariam? Mariam, are you there? Mukoda, your hand is up. Can you tell us what you want to say? Mukoda? Okay. Now, I sent some questions, and Mr. Namdala is helping us to get those questions on the board that are on the screen. For those of you who are not on our link, our platform, you can have these questions. We had numbers from number 2 up to number 6. But the part I'm having here, we are beginning with number 2 and number 3. Number 2, you are supposed to represent the line segments joining the given points on the XY plane. You are to represent the line segments of joining the 2 points given on the XY plane. We had Roman 1, Roman 2, Roman 3, Roman 4, Roman 5, and Roman 6. The set of points, 2 points joined together, they form a line segment. And then for number 3, you are supposed to find the midpoint of each of the line segment. So number 2 and number 3 are together. Number 2, can someone read for us question number 2? Someone there, can you read for us question number 2?
Mark these pairs of points and join each.
We are listening. Someone?
Mark pairs of points and join each pair with a line segment.
So thank you very much. Who is that one?
Stacy.
Tracy? So thank you very much. We have pairs of points form a line segment. You mute this. Now, when you look at the first pair, we are having Roman 1, we are having point 72 and 32. Remember, it is always the x coordinate first, followed by the y coordinate. So for 72, 7 is the x coordinate, while 2 is the y coordinate. So we have 7 on the x-axis, 2 on the y. That is the first point. Then the second point is 3, 2. So we have 3 on the x-axis, 2 on the y-axis. And then when we join them together, we form a line segment. And because we don't want to confuse the lines, we are going to do number 3 and number 2 together. For each line segment we draw, we find the midpoint. So we have Roman 1. Can someone give us the coordinates of the midpoint of this line segment? Point 7, 2, and 3, 2.
Page of the home study book.
Yes.
5,2.
5,2. So, thank you very much. We are locating in the midpoint. The midpoint is the point that divides our line segment into 2 equal parts. So from here, from the starting point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Now, if we are finding the midpoint, we only half of the steps, that will be 2 steps. And the point is here. The coordinates are 5, 2. Thank you very much. Then Roman 2, we are having the point, coordinates of the point 0, 3, and 0, 7.
So page is that?
I beg your pardon? The work is from the Uganda Mathematics, Uganda, US.
Just tell them it's an exercise.
This is an exercise from some book, which is on coordinates. So as much as we have our books here, we can borrow some work from another book to stress the point we have talked about.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about the plotting of points. Now we are getting some other work which also concerns plotting points. Some people were not around when we had our first lesson, even our second lesson, but they need not to be left behind. Even those ones who are around, we needed to get it better. Because when I looked at the graphs you are drawing, some of you are not marking the axes. So I'm stressing some of the points that we saw in the first lesson and the second lesson. I'm bringing this work to help us understand better what we did in the first lesson and the second lesson. So the worker is on the chalkboard. Don't bother looking into the other book. It is already here. That's why you are bringing it on the screen.
First, concentrate and you understand. They are going to give you more exercises to do. For right now, let us concentrate and we see what the teacher is doing and you ask.
And it
Am I
is
clear? Don't copy. First, look at the teacher and you understand.
so now for question number 2, Roman 2, we are having the endpoints of the line segment are 0, 3 and 0, 7. 0, 3 and 0, 7. Remember the first coordinate is always the x coordinate and the second one is the y coordinate. So we have 0, 3, meaning that we get 0 from the axis and 3 on the y-axis. So we locate the point 0, 3. And the second point is 0, 7. So our second point is 0 on the x and 7 on the y. When we join the line segment, we still find its midpoint. I've told you we are doing the number 2 and the number 3 together. For whatever line segment we draw, we shall be finding the midpoint. Not to be confused when we have drawn so many line segments. Now, for this line segment, what is its midpoint? How many steps do we have? From 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 points. And if we want to find its midpoint, we find a point that divides it into 2 equal parts. So where will that midpoint?
0,
Yes?
0, 5.
Let's
0, 5.
give it a
0,
so
5.
5 is the midpoint. Our Roman 2, the line segment is 0, 3 and 0, 7. The midpoint has coordinates 0, 5. That is very good. Well, can we look at Roman number 3? Roman number 3. Yes.
Excuse me.
You are
At the other side of the blackboard, are those the answers for the questions?
I beg your pardon?
This side, the other side of the blackboard.
This side?
No?
Oh, dear. You
Yeah,
don't
that's
see this.
So, teacher, are those
Yes.
answers or like I'm not understanding? I've just joined right now.
The question is,
The
Excuse
questions are
me,
here.
teacher. Can you please repeat
People listen.
everything?
The questions are here. We are solving these questions. So these things, everything you are seeing on the blackboard, we are doing solutions for these questions on the screen.
understood?
Yes, teacher.
Okay.
What you have to do when the teacher is explaining on the blackboard, you tap on the teacher's photo so that you see what she's explaining on the blackboard. Then if at all you want to see the question, you tap on the question board. Am I clear?
Yes, teacher.
Yes.
Okay, we continue. Those ones who have just joined, we are going on another. We have like over there are 6.
There are 6.
Yes, so all of them we are going to pass through them as we understand.
And we are doing question number 2 and question number 3 together. Question number 2, we are marking the line segments. And question number 3, we are finding the midpoint of each of the line segments. So whatever we draw, we find the midpoint as well. We are doing question number 3 together, number 2 together with number 3. Is that okay? Now, question number 3, the line segment joins point 0, 2 and 80. 0, 2, and 80. The condition is that we first plot them on the blackboard. So we have 0, 2, and 80. 0 on the x-axis. The first coordinate is the coordinate on the x-axis, and the second one is the coordinate on the y-axis. So we are having 0, 2, 0 on the x and 2 on the y. So we plot that point. And the second point is 80. So 8 on the x, 0 on the y. So the y coordinate is still on the x-axis. That is the second point, the second line segment. Can we join them with a line? We join with a line. And then we are finding its midpoint. I saw some girls posted some work and they had done it very well. So now we are looking at from this point to this point, how many steps are we taking? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 steps across and 2 steps down. We have 18 steps across from this point to this point. We have 18 steps across and 2 steps down. Now, if we are to go halfway, how many steps across shall we go? And how many steps down shall we go?
4, 1.
How many? We shall go 4, 1. Thank you very much. We had 8, 2. Now, if we are to go halfway, we are going to go 4 steps across and 1 step down. We locate the midpoint. What are the coordinates of the midpoint?
4,
What
1.
are
4, 0.
4, 1.
4, 1.
the midpoint?
4, 1.
4, 1. Thank you very much. So we had 2, 0 and 8, 0. The midpoint has coordinate 4, 1. Thank you very much. Now, I believe you plotted the other point, did you?
Yes.
Did you?
Which point?
Yes.
Which one?
0, 0, and 3, 7.
Now we are having the other points. We have 0, 0, and 3, 7. 0, 0, and 3. Yes. Your name?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, your name?
Regina.
Regina, yes.
Can you please repeat question?
I beg your pardon? I'm
Repeat
getting
question 3.
question 3. Is there anything you have not understood?
Yes.
What have you understood?
Yes. How do you find the midpoint?
The midpoint.
Understanding. How do you find the midpoint?
Okay, number 3. We are repeating question number 3 for Regina and the other students who might not have got it well. We are starting from this point to this point. The line is
Teacher, we are not able to see.
to 80. How do we move from this point to this point? Leave alone number 1, which we have completed. We are now looking at how we move from this point to this point. For instance, if it is AB, how do we move from A to B? We first take the steps across and then the steps vertically. So across, we are moving from here. We are moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Up here, the steps you are taking across are from here up to here, and they are 80. How many steps are they?
8
How many
steps.
steps across?
8 steps.
8 steps.
Then downwards, we are moving from here up to here. So how many steps do this make downward?
2 steps.
There are
2 steps.
downward. Now we have taken 8 steps across
And 2 steps downward.
and 2 steps downward. we are to go halfway, how many steps shall we go across? Halfway.
4 steps.
We shall move 4 steps across. And how many steps downwards?
1 step.
1
step.
1 downwards. Now, we are here. Can you take the 4 steps? 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 steps is stop here, not stop.
Yes.
And then 1 step downwards. Where do we stop?
At 1.
So we are making that one the midpoint. What are the coordinates of this point?
4, 1.
That's why we are making the midpoint as 4, 1.
4, 1.
That is
4, 1.
Regina, is your question answered? Regina, are you still there? Is your question answered?
Excuse me, teacher.
Mm.
So why do we take the down steps?
Why do we get the down steps?
Yes.
If I may ask, why are we getting the steps across? We have our line segment from here up here, and we want to find its midpoint. The point that divides it into 2 and 1 part. Now, if we are taking the steps across up to the point, then the steps down. When you are moving halfway, you have to take half of the steps you have taken from the first point to the last point. Are we together?
Yes.
From the starting point to the last point, we have taken 8 steps across, and we have taken 2 steps downwards. If we are to go halfway, we divide the steps into 2. Divide 8 by 2, what do we get?
4.
Divide 2 by 2, what do we get?
1.
It is by coincidence that the coordinates are 4, 1, but now that does not represent this 4 and 1 does not mean the midpoint will be 4, 1, but it represents the number of steps we are moving up to the midpoint by dividing it by 2. So we are moving 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 downwards, 1. By coincidence, the number of steps we are taking 4, 1 are the same as the coordinates, but doesn't necessarily mean that always you find it, the coordinates will be the same as the number of steps you are taking. Are we getting it, members?
Yes,
teacher.
Thank you. We are moving to, can we move to Roman 3, Roman 4?
Number 4. Yes.
Yes. Roman 4, if you had not taken the first one very well, now be very keen to see how you are getting with a midpoint here.
0, 0,
0, 0, and
0 and
3, 7. 0, 0, 3, 7. 0, 3, 7. 0, 3, 7.
7. Can we plot 0, 0, members?
Yes, it's there.
X and 0 on the Y. So we are having the origin of our first point. And
Excuse me, teacher. Excuse me, teacher. Excuse me.
Your name?
Excuse me, teacher.
Your name?
Kabwa Ramadan. Kabwa Ramadan. Kabwa.
Mute members who are not talking, you mute so that we can get Kagwa clearly. Yes, Kagwa.
Excuse me. 0, 0. Where they come from?
Your network is not very clear. We are getting. We are on number 4, Roman 4.
Yes, number 4. Yes. So, not understanding where has it come from?
Ask. I'm waiting for your question, Kagwa.
She said that she's not understanding.
What haven't you understood?
Where have we got 307?
You get the question? Do you see the questions?
Yes.
Roman number 4, what are the points we need to join?
0, 11, 6, 9.
Roman number 4 members.
0, 0, and 3, 7.
0, 0, and 3, 7. Are we together there?
Sorry. Yes. Yes,
0, 0. We are getting the questions are on the screen. Don't take any.
Excuse me, teacher.
Who is that one?
My name is Anita.
Yes, Anita.
I was asking which page are we?
No, don't you open it. I just got these questions from a text book. And I wanted us to emphasize the points we had talked about in the first lesson and second lesson. That is plotting and identifying the axis. So you can just get the question on the screen, taking the text.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you,
So the
teacher.
questions are on the screen. Read number 4. What are the points? Members, mute if you are not giving us an answer so that we can
0, 0.
0, 0.
0, 0, 3, 7.
0, 0, 0, 0.
Mute. It's
7.
when we plot them, join them with a straight line. Join them with a straight line. We still have to find the midpoint. So can we take the steps across? Always begin with the steps across and then the vertical steps. So how many steps across? 1, 2, 3. Are we there? Those are the steps across. And then the steps vertically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 3 steps across and 7 steps upwards. Now, if we have 3 steps across, 7 steps downwards, if we are to go halfway, how many steps shall we go across and how many steps shall we go vertically? How many steps we are to go halfway? How many steps shall we go across and how many steps shall we go vertically?
For 3, we shall go 1.5. For 3, 1.5. For 7, 3.5.
Then vertically we'll go 3.5. 3.5.
So now, we begin from our starting point and we are going to go
3.5.
So we have 1.5. In the middle there we have 1.5.
What else can you see on the screen there?
So our midpoint will be here. And what are the coordinates of the midpoint? We have 1.5, 3.5. So what are the
it means a lot of things. So you should also
3.5.
I mean,
1.5.
1.5.
1.5, 3.5.
1.5. Are you there?
members who are talking, please?
1.5.
Teacher, why has that line crossed 7, 1 up to 7?
And you're talking.
Excuse me, teacher, how did you get the 1.5 and the 3.5?
This one is doing well.
The steps across, then the steps vertically. Across we are having 1, 2. Remember the starting point is here, the ending point is here. So we are counting the steps across 1, 2, 3. And then vertically we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have three steps across and then 7 steps upwards, vertically. Attending with their young sisters, please. The younger sisters are disorganizing the lesson. Now, if we are to go halfway, we divide the steps across by 2 and the steps across vertically by 2. Divide this by 2. Divide 7 by 2. We are getting 3.5. And then we come here, the first steps are across. So we are taking 1.5. Then vertically, we are taking 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. We locate the midpoint. Then we give the coordinates of the midpoint. From here, this is a half, 1.5. And vertically, we are having 3.5. And it is the coordinates 1.5 and 3.5.
I'm not understanding anything.
Teacher, how do you divide the small box into 2?
You approximate, the whole of it is 1. Then approximate having a half of it. Even here, you approximate. A half is easy to approximate. It is not like a 0.1, 0.2.
You have to be accurate.
Teacher, even inside that one box, there are 5 boxes inside, so you write in the middle box. So there be 2 on each side.
Thank you.
Excuse me, teacher.
You approximate.
Your name? Raihana? Raihana?
Teacher.
Yes.
Is it a must to divide by 2 or you divide according to the cardinal points that I've given you?
When you are finding the midpoint, we are interested in getting a halfway. So you have to divide by 2. We are dividing by 2, and by this chance, we are having half points. For the first numbers, when you are dividing by 2, the steps you are getting whole numbers, whole numbers, whole numbers. But by coincidence, in number 4, we are getting half points. So that's why you are getting a half. And you always divide by 2. If you are taking the midpoint, because a midpoint is a value that divides the whole journey into 2 equal parts. So that's why we are dividing by 2. Answered? You're welcome. Afoyo?
Excuse me, teacher.
Name?
Lynn.
So, teacher,
Lynn,
can
yes.
you write the answer as 3.5?
Yes, I was asking which one of the 2 methods is better?
Yes?
Which one of the 2 methods is better?
Have we given 2 methods? So far we are on 1 method.
Counting the steps and estimating.
No, we first counted the steps, and now we are having 1.5. Why I've said let's estimate? We are dividing this box into 2 equal parts, so your approximation should be accurate. Is this box divided by 2? Yes, we divide it by 2. This part will take a half, and this part will take a half. Even here, 3.5, that is 3.5. So you divide it by 2. Is your question answered?
Yes.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes. Name?
Karunji Shiba Ochanda.
Karunji, yes.
Teacher, I was asking, is it proper if you're to write 3.5 or 1.5?
I'm saying it is very proper. You can write it as 1.5, 3.5. You can write it as 1.5.
Excuse me, teacher, I've not understood.
Your name?
Excuse me, teacher.
All of us.
Nasuna? Are you there?
Excuse me, teacher.
For me, my problem
Excuse me,
is
teacher.
Let me have
Is it
Nassolo,
okay if I use a compass to bisect?
you are talking at the same time. I can't follow. Nassolo, are you there? If Nassolo is there, who is not there, Hafswa. Hafswa, your hand is up. Can you talk?
Teacher.
Are you Hafswa?
Teacher.
Teacher,
Your
is
name?
it proper to use a compass to bisect?
You don't have to. You can easily see that this is a half of.
Thank you, teacher.
Welcome.
Excuse
Teacher.
me, teacher.
Name.
Can they give Franklin Agava?
Yes.
Can they tell you that 7, you have to make it vertical?
You have to make it
vertical.
Vertical. We are just counting. Starting point is here, the ending point is there. In the first place, we are plotting the end point of the line segment. One point was 0, 0. The second one was 3, 7. So after you have drawn them, join them with a straight line. Are you getting me?
Yes.
Yes.
Teacher.
Teacher.
First give the teacher a chance.
Wait and explain.
First give the teacher a chance to explain, then you ask later.
Frankly, you are saying must we get 7 vertical steps? We are looking at the starting point and the ending point. The starting point is 0, 0. The ending point is 3, 7. Now, after you have plotted the points and joined them with a straight line, we now count the steps across and the steps vertically. Across, from here up here, you are moving. Across, you are moving from here to here, and upwards, you are moving from here up to there. Then moving from 0 to this step, how many steps are you moving across? How many? 3. And then how many vertical steps are you making? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, the midpoint is the point that divides our line segment into 2 equal parts. We had 3 steps across and 7 steps vertically. Now, how do we get the midpoint? We divide the steps you have moved across by 2. We divide the steps we have moved vertically by 2. When you divide the 3 by 2, what do we get? 1.5. We get
1 remainder 1.
1.5.
1.5. 1.5 across. Then how many steps vertically?
3.5.
3.5.
Then you come to the starting point. You come to the starting point. Across, how many steps are we supposed to go?
1.5.
1.5.
And
Then how many steps vertically?
3.5.
3.5. 3.5.
After you have located it, we now read the coordinates, the x coordinate as well as the y coordinate. What is the x coordinate at this point?
1.5.
1.5.
3.5. What
5.
is the y?
3.5. 3.5.
3.5.
That is the midpoint. Are we together, members?
Yes.
Yes. Can we move?
Yes.
Excuse me, teacher. Teacher, how come that here we have 2 middle points and the other? My name is Stacy. How comes we have 2 middle points and on the other we don't have 2 middle points?
Have 2 middle points? Which one do we have?
On number 4.
So,
Stacy, the point where you are, you mute yourself, Stacy. They are going to answer you. You are in the noisy place.
so we are having, we are talking about 2 points. This point is written in different form. We looked at fractions, and we converted the fractions to decimals. Not so. We converted the fractions to decimals. So we have 1.5. When you convert it to decimal, that will be 1.5. Then we have 3.5. When you convert it to decimal, it will be 3.5. So we are not having 2 points, we are having 1 point, but written in a different form. Here it is written as a mixed fraction, and here it is written as a decimal. Am I clear?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we now look at Roman 5? Roman 5, we had the points. Check on your screen. 10 points were 1, 6, and 8. 1, 6, and 8 what?
2. 8. 8, 2.
1,
8,
8,
8,
8, 2. So we have 1, 6 as the first point, 8, 2.
8, 2 points.
I've made my chalkboard a little bit untidy because I had to show the steps. You don't have to write this. So we can remove these steps to give us a clear
picture.
So now we are now going to look at the line segment without the steps, but we shall know that they are there. The first point is 1, 6. The second point is 82. We join it with a line. So now we have our starting point is 1, 6, and the ending point is 82. We need to find out how many steps we have moved across and how many steps we have moved vertically. Are we there?
Yes.
We are from here up to here. Now, can we count the number of steps we have moved across? 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There are how many?
7 steps.
7 steps. 7 steps.
Can we count that step vertically?
1, 2, 3, 4.
4. So we are having
7 horizontal, 4 vertical.
7 horizontal, 4 vertical.
4 vertical.
Are we at bar?
Horizontal,
Yes.
7 vertical.
Yes.
No.
Now, the midpoint is the point that divides our line segment into 2 equal parts. So we have moving across the number of steps vertically. How many steps are we moving? How many steps?
7.
We move
7.
3.5.
It is 3.5.
3.5.
3.5. 3.5.
2.
2.
So across we are going to move how many steps? 3.5. How many? 2. Right? We start 1,
Yes.
2, 3.5. 3.5 across, and then 2 downwards. 1, 2. So we rotate our midpoint. What are the coordinates of the midpoint? In number 4, number 5.
Teacher, please repeat.
4.5 and 2.
So please repeat. We didn't understand the places.
I repeat
Teacher,
from
please
where?
repeat.
From
From
the
where?
point of halfway. From the
From the
halfway
cut
part.
of halfway of 3.5 and then the 2. Then
Are we all on Roman number 5? Roman number 5? Yes?
Yes.
So the end points are?
Excuse me, teacher.
I'm listening. Your name?
Helen. Because we not understood the way you divided the 3.5 and 2.
The bad thing, you don't listen. If you were listening, you would know. Each one wants to ask, you all want to ask at the same time. And then you keep repeating the same question. Now, I'm trying to repeat number 5. We have endpoints, Roman 5. The endpoints are 1, 6, and 2, and 82. Where are the points? The first point is here. 1 on the x, 6 on the y. Then the second point is 82. 8 on the x, 2 on the y. We plot the point. Clear? Clear?
No. Yes.
You know how to plot the point? So we have 1, 6, and then 82. We join them with a straight line. And then we want to go halfway. In order to get the midpoint, we are going to go halfway. Then we need to know how many steps we are moving from here up to here across, and how many steps we are moving vertically. This point, we're moving across how many steps? Count 1, 2, 3, 4.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There are 7 steps across. These are 7 steps across. Then vertically, how many steps? 1,
2,
3, 4.
4 steps.
4 steps. Vertically.
We have 7 steps across. 4 steps. Now, if we want to go halfway, we divide the steps we moved across by 2. We divide the steps that we moved vertically by 2. Divide the 7 by 2, we get 3.5 or 3.5. Divide the 4 by 2, we get 2. So now, in order to move to the midpoint, we are going to go from the starting point. We are going to go 3 steps across and 2 steps vertically. We go to the starting point. We now have to move 3.5 steps across and 2 steps vertically. So we have 1, 2, 3.5. Right? Are we together?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So this side is 3.5, this side is 3.5. Then we are moving how many steps?
2 steps.
2 steps. 2 steps.
1, 2. And we will make the mid. Are we together?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
We now state the coordinates of the midpoint. What are the coordinates of this point here? 4.5, yes.
3.5.
5, 4. 5, 4.
We first give the x coordinate. Here we are moving it 4.5. And then this side we are moving. What are the coordinates? What is the x coordinate?
4.5.
What is the y coordinate? 4.5. The y coordinate is the end point. They were 1, 6, and
8.
Has those coordinates.
Excuse me, teacher.
I'm there.
Sarah? Excuse me, teacher.
Name?
Alia.
Alia, yes.
I was asking that Alia Baiga.
Yes.
I was asking that Is it a must that you're supposed to label the midpoints on the graph after you have found them?
Oh, yeah. When you write them in the graph, you might crowd it. That's why I'm putting it aside, because the requirement for the graph was number 2, and this is number 3. We are doing the number 2 and the number 3 together. Now, if you must write the coordinates in the graph, you're going to crowd it. That's why I'm just labeling the first one was here, the second one was here, the third one here, the fourth one was here. So that's somebody looking at your graph is able to know which number you are answering.
Excuse me, teacher. Excuse me, teacher.
You are excused.
My name is Bella. I was asking on the board you wrote across and vertical, and you said halfway you got 3.5 and then you got 2, but then on your answer you're putting 4.5 and 4.
Okay, now we are trying to identify here, we are trying to identify the position of the midpoint. We are finding the position of the midpoint. And it is coming from Roman number 3, where we had, by coincidence, Roman number 2, by coincidence, the number of steps coincided with the coordinates of the midpoint. That was not correct. Now here we are trying to identify the position of the midpoint. After we have identified the midpoint, we read the coordinates. Are we together? Are we together? That was earlier.
Yes.
We started from here.
Yes, teacher.
Here. We started from 106 to 82. And we counted the number of steps across, which came to? Which came to?
7.
7. For there some people attending with their young sisters, please. Can you let them go? Now, if these are the steps we are moving from the starting point to the ending point, what about if you are to go halfway? The 7 steps we moved across will be divided by 2 to give us 3.5. And then the 4 steps we moved vertically will be divided by 2 to give us 2. Now here we are trying to identify the midpoint. We go back at the starting point. We know that we have to go halfway. So how many steps shall we move across? It will be 3.5.
3.5.
And then how many steps shall we move vertically?
2.
Then we go back. We move 3.5. Move 2. So we locate the midpoint, the position of the midpoint. Yes, teacher. Has to identify or to locate the midpoint. We have located this. Now, from here, we read off the coordinates. And I asked you, what is the x coordinates here?
4.
4.5.
4.5. 4.5.
4.5.
Y coordinate at this.
We get.
Yes?
We get.
4.5.
And a half.
4. The x coordinate. What about the y coordinate?
4. 4.
So it doesn't mean that the number of steps we are going to pass the coordinates. This one will just help us identify the position of the midpoint. And if we have identified the position, we now read the coordinates.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher. We have understood.
Teacher.
Thank you very much. Now, number 6. Number 6, what are the endpoints?
Excuse me, teacher.
3 to 3, 3, and 8.
3. Teacher number 5. 8, 6.
After getting the points, are you supposed to name them how you want? 3, and 8,
6.
3, 8, 6.
Said it will cause crowding.
3, and 8.
Can we join with a straight line?
Yes.
So still in the same way, in order to find the midpoint, we have to find out how many steps we move across and how many steps we move vertically. So can we count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many steps? 5 steps. 5 steps across. 5, we are on number 6. 5 steps across.
5 steps across.
1, 2, 3. How many?
3 steps.
3 steps.
If we are to go halfway, how many steps shall we move across and how many steps shall we move vertically?
2.5, 2.5,
then
and 1.5.
So from here across we are moving 3, that we are moving 2.5. We have 1, 2.5. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, teacher.
1.5.
Yes.
So,
5.
now, can you read the x coordinate and the y coordinate?
5.5, 5.5, 4.5.
5.5, then 4.
4.5.
Excuse me, teacher.
Teacher, now we have understood.
Thank you.
Excuse me, teacher. I haven't understood number 6.
What
Excuse me,
which,
teacher. I haven't
your name? Your name?
Roman numeral 6. I haven't understood it.
Your name?
Natalie Zoe.
Yes. Which haven't you understood?
Roman numeral 6. I haven't understood it.
Which part of Roman numeral number 6 haven't you understood?
From the beginning.
Have you plotted the points?
Yes.
The first one, what are the coordinates?
What? The coordinates are 3 to 3.
And then the second point?
8 to 6. 8 to 6.
8 to 6. So we have drawn a line segment joining the 2 points. And then from that point, we are counting the steps across. Can you help me count? 1,
yes.
2,
1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5. There are 5.
And then vertically?
Yes.
We
have 1, 2, 3.
How many?
3.
In order to go to the midpoint, we have to divide the number of steps by
2.
And to divide 5 by 2, what do we get?
2.5.
By 2, what do we get?
1.5. 1.5.
Go back at our starting point, which was 3.
Yes.
1. Divide that into 2 equal parts.
Yes.
Then across the 1, 5. So you have 1, 2.
Yes.
In vertically, we move 1.5. We don't go up, so we locate our midpoint. Then from here, we are asking ourselves, what are the points of the midpoint? The point is here. What is its y? What is its coordinate? What is its x coordinate?
5.5.
And then what is one coordinate?
4.5. 4.5.
It's the
4.5.
coordinates. 4.5
And a half.
Excuse me.
And a
teacher.
half.
Excuse me, teacher.
Why are we doing this number different
have
from the
understood.
way we
Thank
did
you, teacher.
number 2 and 3?
We have not done it differently. We are doing it the same way. We are doing it the same way.
Teacher, are we writing or we are just discussing?
Numbers. Listen.
Writing. Excuse me, teacher.
Listen. In each of the numbers, we are plotting the first point and the ending point. Afterwards, find the number of steps you have moved from the first point to the second point. The number of steps you have moved from the first point to the second point upwards or vertically. Then, if you are to go halfway, we divide those number of steps by 2 to give us the coordinates, the position of the midpoint. Then afterwards, we read off the coordinates of the midpoint. And that is what we have done from number 1 up to Roman number 6.
Excuse me, teacher. Excuse me, teacher.
Give your name.
Anita.
Yes, Anita.
Teacher, are we supposed to write the work in our book?
Yes, please.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, when you're writing this,
Teacher, in our graph books or class workbooks?
We need graphs. You are drawing graphs. That's why you are writing in your graph books.
Excuse me, teacher.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, I've just joined and I'm not understanding anything.
The recorded lessons are going to be, who is that one laughing like a man? Recorded lessons are going to be put on the e-learning platform. Anything you want to refer to, you will go back to the recorded lesson. Where you find a challenge in the box, yes?
How do you find the recorded lessons on the platform?
Mr. Namdala, any query, you ask the coordinator, who is Mr. Namdala?
Excuse me, teacher.
Now, members.
Excuse me, teacher.
Your name?
Husna.
Your name?
Husna.
Yes, Kushina.
Like, according to our graph books, the boxes, like the squares are small. So do you consider the big square or the small squares?
Your graph book, your graph book has
small boxes.
There are so many boxes, but now we are taking boxes of 1 centimeter. When you look at your graph paper, you see the bold line which demarcates 1 centimeter. Boxes are 1 centimeter. So you take a step.
Teacher.
All right, Minap.
Teacher, can you please help me on 1.6?
Excuse me, teacher.
First we get for you.
I'm getting it up.
So that you see what the teacher is meaning.
Do you see the graph paper on your screen?
Yes, teacher.
Yes,
so now that graph paper has So now when you measure these bold lines, these squares, from here up to here, from here up here, that is 1 centimeter. When you try to measure it, it is 1 centimeter. Here it is expanded, but each square is 1 centimeter. Now, when you are dividing your graph paper, can you use steps of 1 centimeter? Are we together?
Thank you, teacher.
Each
Yes.
box
So very good on that one. Okay.
To the boxes I have on the board. Although here when I measure it is not 1 centimeter, but on your graph paper, that box is 1 centimeter. So can you use steps of 1 centimeter? Yes, smallest squares, those smallest squares are too small. You can't write the numbers there. Now you can see here they are having a month in a year. So each month is given 1 centimeter. Each month is given 1 centimeter. So that's what you will have on the horizontal, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Are you getting it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, teacher.
Change the other of not then you different format shape.
Mute. We are not communicating. We are not listening to you. Now, can we move to question? We have answered question 1 and another question 2 and 3. We have answered question 1, question 2 and 3. We have question number 4, question number 5, and question number 6. Those of you who tried to do that number, because I sent it before time, did you do? Any of you do that number? Number 4, number 5, number 6. Somebody who did them? No. There are some because
No, teacher. Yes.
Now let's try, because we're supposed to use 1 graph paper, but my chalkboard here is small. I can't have the 18 which was there. When you look at number 4, are you there?
Yes.
Somebody to read for us. Number 4.
Join the point 0 with lines with a line segment. Then join the point.
The number.
What is your name?
What is 6, 9? Join the point 1, 9 are the coordinates option of the 2 segments.
Your name?
Aisha.
Your name?
Aisha.
Aisha. So Aisha, can you read the number 4?
Join the points 0, 11, and 6, 9, 6 line segments. Then join the points 1, 9, and 7, 1, 12 with another line segment that intersect.
What are the coordinates of the
0, 11.
11, so we plot 0, 11. The second point is
6, 9.
9. So we have 0, 11, and 6, 9. Can we join?
Yes.
The second line segment, what are the points?
1, 9.
1,
9.
7, 12.
7, 12.
10, 4. So can we also join?
Yes.
What is the question?
What are the coordinates of the intersection of the 2 segments?
So we have question number 4. Can somebody help us answer it?
Yes, me teacher. I'm not understanding,
Excuse me, teacher. We draw on the same graph.
Yes, there is a bit apart there from question number 2 to question number 7 are to be answered using the page in your graph book, which you have prepared. They can all be answered on one page. So if you have prepared the page very well, you would cater for all those questions.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
The intersection is 310.
What is your question? So the point of
the intersection is 310.
Number 4, point of intersection is 310. Can you clap?
Teacher, you're not heard.
The point of intersection is 310. Our intersection is here, and somebody is reading the coordinates because that was the requirement for that question.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
This is Sisime Belinda.
Sisime?
Belinda. Yes, teacher, I'm asking, when we are drawing the line segments from the beginning point to the ending point, how do we know where to end from, like to stop?
They have given you the 2 points. They have given the line segment joining the 2 points. For instance, if you go back to number 1, you are starting from, if you go back to question number 2, Roman 1, the starting point is 72 and the ending point is 32. So you are given the 2 end points of the line segment.
Oh, teacher, I get it. Thank you.
You come. Now, can you try number 7? That are number 5? Number 5, who can read it for us?
Repeat question 4.
Repeat the
If the first segment joins 8 and 14, 11, and the second segment joins 14, 3 and 8.
Question 4. If the first segment joins 8 and 14, 11, and the second segment.
So now we are repeating the procedure for number 4. Number 4, we are joining 2 line segments. We drew 2 line segments and found the point of intersection. So that is the same thing we are supposed to do with the number 5. We draw the 2 line segments, then we shall find the point of intersection. We have the points on the first line segment. Can somebody give us? Can you give us the 2 endpoints of the first line segment? Miracle, are you there?
Yes.
Miracle, give us the first one.
Teacher, I've just joined.
You have just joined. Another one who has been there. Afoyomungu. Afoyomungu, can you give us the endpoints of the line segment, the first segment? Not there also. Okay, Josephine, can you give us the endpoints of the line segment? You don't have the question. You should have said some. Aswa? Aswa, are you there?
Yes, teacher.
Can you give us the ending points of the first line segment?
8, 8, and 14, 11.
8, 8. Good. 8 on the X, 8 on the Y, and
14, 11.
14 on the X, 11 on the Y. 14 on the X, 11 on the Y. Thank you. Can you give us the endpoints of the second line segment?
14, 3.
14, 3. 14 on the X, 3 on the Y. And
8, 12.
8, 12. Am I plotting rightly? Am I plotting rightly?
Yes, teacher.
So the first one is this line segment. The second one is here. Now, who can help us? Give us the coordinates of the point of intersection. The coordinates of
Teacher, it's 10, 9.
10, 9. Thank you very much. You're going to help me do the last one, that is number 6, because I did not provide for it here. I don't have 18, and I need it for that question. But I know with your graph paper, you can achieve that. You can have from 0 up to 18 on the y-axis, from 0 up to 14 on the x-axis. Then you're going to plot the line segments in number 6, and then find the point of intersection. Together, members. Let me write it. Those who don't have the questions, you can write them. But if you are on our assignment group, the questions are already there. Those who are on our assignment group, the questions are there. If you are not there, the questions are there on the screen. You can write them down. Now I can listen to, if any. Any query?
Excuse me, teacher.
Excuse
me,
teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, is the lesson done?
That's your question.
Teacher.
Excuse me, teacher.
Done.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Excuse me, teacher, can you please do for me number 5? Number 5, number 2.
Excuse me, teacher. I will be right
Number 2, Roman 5. Can you please do for me number 2, Roman 5?
Teacher, I lost connection. Can you do at least one number?
Thank you, teacher, for teaching me.
You guys, those who are
Thanks, teacher, for teaching.
Excuse me, those who are there in the beginning.
Where can we find the coded lessons?
Don't you sit back waiting for the recorded lesson to attend in person, because sometimes you may have questions and then there is no one to ask. So be attentive and attend to all the lessons. Come in time. That is the best way you can understand. Now, can you take a note of, click on the chalkboard and then you get the notes we are getting for. That midpoints can be obtained by drawing or by calculation. How? We are taking example number Roman 1. Roman 1, we had check this.
Excuse me, teacher. Excuse me, teacher. Your camera isn't clear.
Clear, not clear.
What is
Your camera?
The camera is not clear.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So here we are having the calculation method if you wanted to find the coordinates of the midpoint.
Excuse me.
The first coordinate, midpoint. The y coordinate of the first point, the y coordinate of the second point. I've used the example Roman number 3, where we had the 2 points, 0, 2, and 8, 0. So how do we get the coordinates of the midpoint? We can add the coordinates, the x coordinate divided by 2. We get the x coordinate of the midpoint. Then we add the y coordinates of the 2 points divided by 2 to get the coordinates of the midpoint. Are we together? So we can use the graphical method, that is drawing, but there is an alternative if it is not a must that you must draw. You can get the average of the 2.
No.
Shall we get the 2?
What does?
Teacher, where did you get the 2?
I'm getting dividing by 2. Remember, we have been dividing by 2 the displacements. But similarly here, if you have the x coordinate of 1 point, the x coordinate of the second point, when you divide by 2, you will get the coordinates of the midpoint. And then you have the coordinates of the y point, the coordinates of the 2 points, y coordinate of point A, y coordinate of point B, divide by 2, we get the y coordinate of the midpoint. Right? In general. Any question before we leave? Any question before we leave?
Teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, does that mean that teacher?
I'm getting your name.
Does that mean like Lachmela Gloria? Does that mean like any coordinate that you want to find, you have to divide by 2?
If you are finding the coordinates of the midpoint of a line segment, so that means you'll be given 2 points, the first point and the ending point. Then if you are finding...
Excuse me, teacher.
Are you answered?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, you're sharing your screen and I can't see like the chalkboard.
Teacher.
No, like you're sharing your screen with everyone. I can't see the chalkboard clearly.
Yes. Excuse me, teacher.
The teacher is not sharing.
Teacher. The teacher is not sharing. Can you explain more about that method?
Teacher.
First where you can see the teacher and then it will come in full screen.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yeah, but teacher is
Extension method.
Teacher, can you explain more about that method?
Yes.
Teacher, can you explain more about that method?
Yes.
Teacher. Teacher. Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
To finish doing. After the lesson, can you give us your number so that we can ask questions?
So that summarizes what I've been explaining. Point A has X and Y coordinates. Point B has X and Y. Then the midpoint of the midpoint is the average of the X coordinates of the 2 points and the average of the Y coordinates of the 2 points.
My teacher.
Thank you.
We are not able to see very well.
Teacher. Excuse me, teacher. Thank you, teacher. I've understood. Excuse me, teacher.
Teacher,
Teacher,
we
can
can't
you
see.
give us your number?
Thank you for your work done. We have understood.
Can you listen? Those of you are right. Are you listening?
Your number.
Yes.
Teacher, we are listening.
By mute.
0, 7, 0, 1.
Thank you for your kind attention.
Bye.
Bye, teacher. Thank you for the lesson. You have understood.
Teacher.